I think I'm
That's the
getting
best
better at
answer.
it.
It's so
Yeah.
honest and so real. Chiara, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited because I, of course, did a little internet stalking prior to this, and I feel like we weirdly have a lot of similar life experiences, so I think this is going to be a fun conversation. But I really want to start when you were in the UK and you started your blog. Like, I want to talk about what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. A lot of fun overlap, which is always nice.
Yeah.
So for me, as you said, I started my travel blog when I was in the UK. I was actually doing a semester exchange overseas. So I live in Canada normally, but went to the UK for a semester. And I was just doing a lot of traveling and writing a lot about it. I wanted to obviously try and remember that experience as much as possible. And so I got the idea to start a travel blog and keep all of my kind of experiences in one spot. This was also a time when I really wanted to practice more of my creative writing skills. I was in university at the time, and so I felt like I was doing a lot of more academic writing and not so much
Yeah.
creative writing. So, yeah, this was just a
Did you
good
go into
way
it
for me to get it
also
out.
with like did you go to it with the intention of wanting to like be a blogger or a writer? Like, what were you studying in university?
So, I did my Bachelor of Arts in university. I mean, I guess I had always wanted to be a writer, but that's not necessarily the reason that I started the blog itself. Like I said, I really just wanted a way to actually share about my travels. I don't really think anyone read it, probably just some family members back home.
Nice.
So when I got back, I actually stopped the blog because I wasn't traveling anymore. But a
Right.
year later, I went abroad again and I started it up again. And I was able to keep it a little bit more consistent. And then it's just grown and changed over time since then.
So wait, how old are you?
I'm 27.
Okay. So I feel like I'm 28, so we were probably doing this stuff like at the same time.
Yeah.
Randomly, I also studied abroad in the UK, and it was
No
like the
way.
best. Yeah, it was like literally the best experience of my life. I think
Yeah.
I've done a lot of like international travel. My family lives abroad, so I feel like I was used to it, but being able to be in London, like as I think I was like 21, it was the most amazing experience. Anytime I ever talk to anybody who's in college, I'm like, you have to study abroad. It's life-changing.
Yes. I totally agree. It was life changing
Yeah.
for me too.
It was like the creativity was just flowing at that age. I felt like I could do anything I wanted and like any of my dreams would come true. And it's such like a magical time in life.
So true. Yeah, I guess that's kind of why I started the blog. And then it's just kind of kept going from there.
So what happened after? Like when did you decide to go like from blogger to poetry writer, like to full-time creator? What was that process like?
Yeah, it's definitely been a process to say the least. So, I guess how poetry comes into it is I've always been writing poetry a little bit on the side. I actually started with poetry specifically in high school, and every now and then I kind of come back to it as a way to just process different
Yeah.
things I'm going through and emotions in my life. And yeah, I guess it was getting towards the end of my university degree when I started thinking more seriously about the potential of making a poetry book and pulling together the poetry that I had written over time.
Yeah.
So that was a fun process to play around with for a while. So I would say I was actually just looking at the specific dates not too long ago, probably around 2018 until 2022. Those were the years where I was really focused on kind of pulling that together. And then I eventually decided that I wanted to take the leap and I self published. So that was released last year. And now it's just been going really well. And I'm wanting to focus, like you said, full time more on those creative pursuits.
It's bananas because those were the exact same dates that I was writing poetry.
That's
And
so
it was
crazy.
so, no, it's wild. Like in I probably started in 2014, like right after I graduated from high school and I was in college. And then like throughout college I was writing in college, I think, as a way to deal with my emotions really. Like
Hmm.
18, you're by yourself basically, you're in this new environment, you're being asked to live like a sort of semi-independent life, and yet you still have these like crazy emotions that you're trying to understand and deal with. And it can be really isolating at times. And so like poetry was how I did mine. And then I graduated college in 2018, and it was around like 2022 that I was like, what if I put this in a book and put it out there? And I also did the
Hmm.
self-publishing journey. So I feel like you and I were like working through the same stuff at the same time. It's wild.
That is so crazy. We should have met earlier.
I know, like what a small world. So I
Yeah.
also kind of want to talk about like your self-publishing journey because I I know a lot of people that have always wanted to write a book, and either, they always inevitably anytime you talk to somebody who wants to write a book, they're like, do I pitch to a publisher? Like, do I self-publish? Like, what is that situation like? And I want to know what your experience was like because I know I had my own experience, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, so true. And I would love to hear about yours as well,
Yeah.
just to see how it's, similar or different to mine. But for me, I actually worked with a self publishing agency. And people do ask me sometimes, they say, like, how did you decide to self publish rather than traditionally publish? And I guess I always knew I was going to do it this way because
Yeah.
I wanted to work with that specific company.
Oh,
I
really?
followed them on social media for a long time prior to doing my own self publishing journey. And so I kind of knew their style and how their authors were doing, and they seemed to be doing really well. And so I just got in touch with them and went from there. So they are a full
That's smart.
agency. Yeah, it was a really great experience for me. They essentially helped me with all of the logistical support, and they helped with finding an editor, finding a
Nice.
designer, and really just putting all the finishing touches on everything to make sure it was, yeah, just good quality and ready to
Yeah.
go. And I had a really good experience with them.
Did you have marketing help after publish as well?
A little bit. I would say probably not as much as I would like,
Yeah.
but that is there. Yeah, we do have
That
monthly
was my
marketing
problem
sessions.
too. Like
Yeah.
the journey for me, self-publishing was fantastic. So
Hmm.
my poetry book was actually the second book that I published. I also published a nonfiction book right out of college because I really wanted to work for Disney. And so I published a book about the future of theme parks to be like, look, like I love theme parks and I'm
That's so
smart. Like I
cool.
wrote a book. It worked. It's so like if you are a young person listening
That's
to this,
awesome.
like just casually write a book, you'll get your job. But no, for real. Like my publishing agency was similar to yours. They were fantastic in that they set you up with an editor, which is like
Hmm.
such a crucial part of the edit of like the author process. Editing is, I think, where the book becomes more than just your writing. It becomes like a full-fledged book, and it's
Hmm.
the most beautiful part of the process. And like similarly, I got a designer to help me with the cover design, and obviously like someone to actually do the actual printing. And then when
Hmm.
publishing happens, they're sort of like fly free, like they help you set up a
Yeah.
marketing plan. But I think that so many people don't realize how important the marketing process is. Like the real work for a book begins after it's written and published. Like that's when the hustle starts, that's when the grind happens. And if you do not have a plan for marketing, like you will not go places.
Yeah. And that's, I would say, definitely what I'm realizing kind of now. Technically, it's been a year since my book has been out. It was published last May. So about a year now. But
Amazing.
yeah, I don't know that I had a specific plan because you do so much work during the publishing process and
Of
then
course.
you're ready to go, you're ready to launch. But like you said, the work is really just beginning then. So I don't know that I
Yeah,
fully
and
realized that, but yeah.
no, it's nobody talks about it enough, I think. Like it's I think like if I were to be put like my little entrepreneurial hat on and I was like if I were to start my own agency, I think that would be such a crucial puzzle piece that I would have like sort of as an additional, because obviously the benefit with self-publishing is that you own 100% of the rights to your book, and that's such like a big
Hmm.
thing. I think in the event that your book blows up and you become like a bestseller, it's really nice to have 100% ownership of your book as opposed to somebody else owning the rights and sort of like being able to do whatever they want with it. But there are trade-offs, and this marketing aspect is one of the big trade-offs for that. And it would be amazing if there was some way to support our authors, because you should, as the author, be 100% focused on editing the book, creating the book, and then like that's I think where you shine. And then at the end of it, you can market it and publish it, or market it in whichever way you prefer. I think people obviously want to get to know you as the author, especially with something like poetry that's so
Hmm.
autobiographical and so deeply personal. Like, I think people
Yeah.
want to hear from you more. So, like, I'm sure you can talk ad nauseum about this. Like, I'm sure your social, actually, this is a great transition. Let's talk about your social media situation. Like, how do you utilize it to talk about your book and to talk about your blog and your podcast?
It's a work in progress, I would say, to put it simply.
That's,
I think I'm
that's the
getting
best
better at
answer.
it.
It's so
Yeah.
honest and so real for a moment. Like, I can relate to where you are, because like I'm always like my social media is a work in progress.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear more. Like, what do you do on a regular basis to for social media?
Yeah. So I will say I've been getting better at it as I've been focusing even more on my creative work. So that's been really nice. So, like in the past 6 months or so, I think I've been focused on that a little bit more. So, one of the things that I do for Instagram specifically is I try to share poems from my book. My book, thankfully, it was actually very well set up for marketing because it
Nice.
goes through the 4 different seasons. So I
Oh,
basically
cool.
had content built in for every single
Yeah,
season of the year, which I did not
smart.
plan, but worked out really well. So depending on what season we're in, I try to share poems from that section of the book on social media and then just direct people to purchase. And lately, I've been doing a lot more events. And so I try to share that on social as well. I do
Cool.
also have an email newsletter, which has been a huge help with kind of getting the word out, especially about events.
Yeah, the more time that I spend on social media, the more that I've been learning about like building an email community. And
Mm-hmm.
I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about this, and she was saying like Instagram is very much like a vanity metric, whereas having an email like following is where you see much more like higher yield results, and like a bigger return. So
Yeah.
how did you start building your email community?
Yeah. So I started building that when I was in the process of actually, I guess, the publishing process. I was pretty much done with the writing process, but going through editing, designing, things like that. So it was
Yeah.
very much initially kind of a behind the scenes of
Oh,
saying what
cool.
was going on with editing and designing, things like that. So that was super fun. And so it was kind of just a way to keep people updated, and everyone that was on that list got to see everything first. So, for
Yeah.
example, when my book cover was ready, they got to see it first before anyone on my social media. So, I tried to do things like that. And then when I was gearing up for launch, I wanted people to sign up through that to order a book for
Oh, cool.
launch parties. Yeah, I hosted
That's
launch
smart.
parties in person, which it went well, but I don't know if I would do it the same next time. So, we'll have to see.
What were your learning lessons from your launch party?
Well, I did 3 of them. So, I think maybe next
Ooh.
time I'll just do one. I did
Why
them
didn't
in
you do
three different
three?
cities.
Okay,
Yeah, so I
okay.
had 3 different city locations that I wanted to do them in, which I do think it worked at the time, and it was nice to be able to connect with those different communities. But on my end, it was a lot of work planning it and
Yeah,
just all the logistics that had to go into it. So, yeah, next time I might just do one, but it was still
yeah.
fun regardless.
Yeah, I mean, and what do you think? Do you think you saw like where do you think your focused energy had like the biggest payoff?
In terms of, are you talking about events or
Yeah,
newsletters or
like
social media?
like, so you spent so much energy and time planning these events. Like, do you think that they did you have like a goal going into them? You were like, I want to sell, a certain number of books, or you were like, I just want to celebrate, like, if if you had any sort of like goals around that, like, did you find that it was successful in that, or did you think that maybe that like, you would do things differently?
Yeah, I would say it was a little bit of both. So it was kind of part celebration, part sales focused.
Yeah.
So I did do pretty well, I would say, overall in my first, if I look back like at the first year of my sales, the majority of my sales did come from those initial launch events, which is really nice. So yeah, still have lots to learn though for next time, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. And I feel like a lot of the times people do see much more success with like in-person events.
Mhm.
Like, I had another girl on the podcast, she has a small athletic wear company, and she did a lot of like different um she tried a bunch of different things. Like, she reached out to press, she did influencers, she does events, and she says that her events are always like the best ways for her to get sales and to like actually talk to the community and like get to know people better.
Yeah, I totally agree. Lately, I've been doing a lot of book signing events. And so those are also in person. And yeah, I think it makes a huge difference. People just
Do you
like to
partner?
talk and get to know you. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think it's so important to like connect with people who actually buy your book, because then they're going to be so much more likely to talk about it with their friends, and then
Hmm.
the word spreads from there.
Yeah.
So when you do these events like in-person book signings, do you go to your local bookstores and try to coordinate with them, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, pretty much. So I have had a lot of success with my local Indigo store. I'm not
Nice.
sure. Are you in Canada or the US?
I'm in the US, but I'm familiar with
Okay.
Indigo.
Yeah, it's like similar to Barnes and Noble basically.
Yeah.
So pretty much at our local one, I just arrange a book signing with them, and it's been going super well. I've had really good turnout at the last couple of ones that we've done, and I have some more coming up. So yeah, it's been a really good, I guess you could say, partnership with them.
Do you think you would write another poetry book?
Yes, I want to. It is
It's
in the works for the future.
Ooh, okay, okay, that's very exciting.
Yes.
I kind of want to talk a little bit about the book itself also, because
Hmm.
ironically, I think both of our poetry books are similar in concept. Mine was written about like the experience of your early 20s and navigating the emotions and the roller coaster that comes with that. And yours is also about self-growth, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on like what the writing experience was like for you, like cathartically, and what the hope was.
Yeah, I would say it's quite similar to the topics that you mentioned. So mine is that seasonal journey. As I mentioned, it goes through the four different seasons. And so deals with lots of different changes and transitions during that time and just all the growth
Mm.
that you experience during that. And it was really cool to put it together because, like I said, I was using poetry over such a long time period that even for me, putting it together, like you could kind of feel the growth throughout the book,
Yeah.
I guess, kind of as you're getting older, which is what I was kind of hoping. And so that was really cool. In terms of cathartically, I mean, I always see writing as a kind of therapy for me. That's a big part of the reason why I do it. I have my own mental health challenges as well. And it's been a huge source of kind of dealing with that and working through things that are coming up. And that's part of the reason I wanted to put the book out as well. I really wanted people to feel that they weren't alone with whatever it is that they're feeling at whatever point they're on in their journey. And so that played a lot into the release of it as well.
Yeah, I was the same. I had such like a wide range of time and pieces that I was looking at. Like, I remember when I made the book, I had printed out each individual piece, and then I used like a whole wall in my house to like literally tape them to the wall so I could see the flow and be like, does this match for this chapter? Or like, does it belong in a different section? Like, does it fit better with these themes? And it was such a fun, unique process that I've never had the pleasure of like experiencing in any other part of my life.
Mhm. That is so funny. I did like the same thing. Pretty much just like putting stuff on the wall and being like, does this fit? Should I move it? I don't know. And then I did some of that with working with my editor as well, moving some things into different sections and stuff. Yeah. It's a very unique process for sure.
You look, it's like you're like a detective and you have like
Yeah.
the murder board with the red yarn
Yeah.
in your house. It's like if people come in, they're gonna think that I've literally lost my marbles at this point in time.
Yeah. So fun though.
It was really fun. So what do you
Mhm.
think about like how does so your business is, you know, all you and it's all of your creations. You know, how do you stay inspired? How do you keep creating? Like, I don't know about you, but I tend to get lost in the day to day grind sometimes. Like, I set a schedule. I'm like, I know what I have to be posting once a week. I have to be posting on Instagram X times a week. Like, what content am I coming up with this week? You know, and I tend to get like lost in the sauce a little bit. And it
Mhm.
sometimes like derails me. So I don't know if you have that experience or if you have ways of dealing with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm getting better at it, hopefully. As I focus, I think more on the creative parts of it, it gets a little bit easier. And I think it's hard with social media in general, just because there's so many things that people think you should be doing and say you
Yeah,
should be doing. And there's a lot of different opinions, I would say. And I think sometimes you just have to kind of go internal and see what's resonating the most for you and how you can kind of put that out there and share with people. So, for
totally.
example, I am working on my TikTok account, which is very new for me. I only started it this year, basically, but I've been working on that. And just at the beginning, I was like, I have no idea what to post here. I don't know what
Yeah,
to do. But eventually, I kind of got into the rhythm and I was like, okay, there's actually a huge book community on TikTok, and it's just been a really nice space for me to make some connections and just share more about my work. And so that's been really nice. But yeah, in terms of creating new things for writing specifically, it's just something that comes out of me because, as
yeah.
I said, writing is kind of like a little bit of a therapy process for me. And so I'm as new things come up for me, I'm working through that and then I'm writing it out as well.
That's how you know you're a true writer. Like my experience was so funny looking back on it now. Like I wrote all this amazing stuff, I put it out there, like I'm super proud of it still to this day. And when it published, I was like, bye, like I'm going to be a full-time writer now. Like that's me. That's who I am.
Yeah.
And my I was like, but I'm not I don't have the same like zeal to write. Like the way that it worked for me is like it would just come. Like
Yeah.
the words would just come and I would just put them out and then they would be there. I never like had to force myself to write. It was just always there. And then after I
Yeah.
published, it was like my body was like, "Ah, we're good now." Like I don't think that we need to do that anymore. And like I don't know, if it happens for me, then it happens, but what you said about social media I think is really important and I want to make sure that we talk about that a little because I just recently, quite literally, like in the last week, had the exact same feelings as you. And I feel like my issue so far with social media is that it really takes you out of thinking internally, right? Like you're constantly
Mhm.
seeing what other people are creating and you're constantly like comparing yourself to that. So I think my problem particularly was, oh, I see this author, this is what works for her. I should replicate those techniques, apply it to like my personality and my, you know, my content, and that'll work.
Mhm.
And then you do that
Yeah.
for a little bit, and then, you know, it doesn't work out, and then you're like tired and exhausted and you don't understand what's going on. And then, like, inevitably, I would get an identity crisis and I'd be like, what am I doing? And it wasn't truly until recently that like I understood what people said when they say you have to create authentic content. I thought that that meant
Mhm.
like just be your genuine personality. I didn't realize that that meant that you needed to create things that excited you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good take on it. I totally agree. It's so easy to compare yourself to others, especially when when you're an author and you're seeing what other people are doing. It's sometimes hard to reach a new community, and so if someone's doing well, obviously you're going to be looking up to them and be trying to
Yeah.
emulate that for you as well. But yeah, that's a great way to think about it, as doing things that excite you. I love that.
Yeah, like it's fine. I mean, we will always be looking for inspiration, right? Like that's part of like
Yeah.
the human experience. You want to get inspiration. And I had to have like such a weird moment with myself the other day where I was like, what do I like to do? Like what do I enjoy doing? And like the answer for me is always like I love YouTube. I'm such a big YouTube girly. I love to edit
Mm.
a vlog. Like it's that formatting and the way that YouTube works is like long form content. I think I just gravitate towards that better.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like short form on Instagram, I feel the immediate need to be performative
Yeah.
and it's exhausting. And then I'm like sitting there like, what the fuck do I talk about? Like I have no idea what to say. And then I'm like, well, maybe I'll go get some inspiration from somebody else. And it just like leads to this whole spiral. And I literally had to be like the other day, I had to admit to myself, I really don't like Instagram. Like if I didn't have to
Mm.
post on Instagram for the podcast, I probably wouldn't. I would probably
Yeah.
just do like YouTube and YouTube Shorts. And that was like a really big revelation for me because I was like, for such a long time, I think I wanted to put all my eggs in the Instagram basket because people see so much success from that.
Yeah, it's so interesting for me to see how different people like different things. Like I, for example, am not into YouTube at all.
Yeah.
So we are like completely different in that sense, but I think it just goes to show that people resonate with different platforms, and I don't think you necessarily like need to do everything or be on everything, and that's
Yeah.
something I'm a little bit wary of too. Even just with social media in general, it's so like could disappear at any moment. At least
Yeah.
YouTube is a little bit more established and it's been around for a long time. It's not going to disappear tomorrow, but Instagram or TikTok always could. So it's always nice to
Yeah.
have something, yeah, that's yours, like an email list or YouTube or podcast, like you
Totally.
said. So,
No,
yeah.
totally. I think like people are always trying to encourage you to be on everything. Like you have to have an Instagram and a TikTok. And if you're a podcast, like you should be posting on YouTube because people should be able to watch your YouTubes. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
when I had this whole epiphany, I was like, oh shit, like if I'm not posting on Instagram, is that going to be a detriment to my guests? Like, are they going to want to have that on their channels as well? And like, therefore, should I be pushing myself to post on Instagram? Again, for the people listening, like this is all a work in progress. I'm literally working through this out loud as we speak right now, which is
Yeah.
probably maybe not the best thing. I shouldn't be like alarming guests, but or alarming my listeners.
It's
But like,
okay.
like, but to your point, I had the thought where I was like, I don't have to do shit. I can do whatever I want. It's my podcast. Like I get to decide how I
Yeah,
want to put it out into the world for people to discover and consume. Like if I don't
exactly.
have I don't have to have an Instagram. And then I started to think about a lot of other podcasters that I love actually don't have an Instagram page for their podcast. They either post it on their personals or like they'll post it on some other sort of platform. And it's like, you don't have to stay constrained within what works for everybody else. And I don't know why it's taken me 85 years to understand that.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think it limits your creativity too. You're trying
Totally.
to fit into a box.
Yeah, you're like, how do I fit within the constraints of what everyone else has seemed to find success within? Because you're like, I want this kind of lifestyle, but you said it so well earlier where you're like, you just have to go internally and go with what you actually like to do as opposed to trying to fit yourself into the mold of what everyone else thinks you should be doing.
Yeah. And I think that's something I am still working on and learning too.
Right? Like it's frankly a metaphor for life. Like
Yes, exactly.
it's a learning process, and I think this conversation is so important because it's so refreshing to talk to somebody who's still figuring their shit out. I think so many times, like, you have guests on the podcast who are already well established, which is great because then as a listener, you can learn from somebody who's already figured it out. But especially as entrepreneurs and content creators, like, it's hard when you're in it and you don't know if it's going to work out. Like, it's so nice
Yeah.
to hear from somebody who's figured it out because you're like, oh no, it is possible. But at the
Mm.
same time, I think we all are looking for something relatable that's like, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have all the answers. Like, I'm kind of stressed and like I'm a little bit
Yep.
nervous.
Yep. I am a little bit nervous. Yeah, it's very true. And I don't know if we will ever have it all figured out, to be honest, especially working in a creative space. I think things are always changing and we just have to ride the waves and see how it goes.
I think doing a creative pursuit like content creation of any sort, like author, artist, even if you're
Mhm.
like a digital creator, I think you guys are like the purest form of entrepreneurialism because if you're like a regular entrepreneur and you have like a product that you're selling, it's easier because you know what you're selling. Like, you have the
Right.
thing and you sell the thing. And it's very actually quite simple in that regard. Whereas if you're an artist or an author, you're always going off of what's coming next. And there's always like that deep fear that like nothing else is going to come. Like, what if this is it?
That's so true. I'm going to tell you a story. Actually, I think you talked about this earlier as well. After you put out your book, I had that moment where I all of a sudden panicked because I realized all the poetry I had already written was pretty much in my book. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden I was like, oh no, like, what if I can't write any more poems?
Yes. Yes.
And I freaked out for a second. Thankfully, I was able to do it. I had to push myself a little bit and be like, okay, can I actually like still write? Maybe. I don't know. But it's fine, people. We're good.
Yeah. You're like,
But it was a scary moment. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, how did you push yourself to get through that? Like, what was your steps?
Well, I was like, I guess I better try to write something to see if I can actually still do this since pretty much all my poetry is either in this book or I've kind of worked through it already. And I mean, thankfully, unthankfully, it depends how you look at it. Shortly after I put out my book, I went through a breakup. So, of course,
Okay.
I happened to need an outlet. And
Right.
there you go. I started writing more poems. So,
Basically, what you're saying is that don't worry, shit will always happen in life to write about.
pretty much. And what do you know? I've written tons of poems since then, like in this past year. So, don't worry. You'll be fine.
Stuff is always going to come up.
Yeah.
So, are you planning to work with the same agency again for your next book? Like, okay, I guess what I'm trying to ask are like,
Mhm.
what are your learning lessons from this book experience that you're going to be taking into potentially writing for your next one?
Oh boy. I feel like there's so many. More so like on the logistical side of things, especially because I mean, obviously it was my first time doing it, so everything was brand new to me, and so that was just
Yeah.
a huge learning process in that sense. So yeah, I would say more technical things like launching. I think I'd be more strategic about that. I might do launch a little bit differently. How I did it is that people had to pre-order a copy and then come to a live event to pick it up. But
Oh,
I might do something different. I might do like some other type of online pre-order situation. I haven't decided yet.
yeah.
And then in terms of getting copies printed, I did do a traditional print run. I actually just did a second print run, which was exciting, but I think next time I'll probably just do like one big one altogether and then not have to do it again later down the line. So, yeah, just technical things like that. I'm still kind of trying to figure out and work my way through, but definitely lots of learnings for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful. Like, anybody listening that has ever wanted to publish a book, like, these are things that they should know. Like, why would you rather do like one big print run as opposed to two?
Purely the cost. for
Okay.
me, on my end at least. Yeah, it's cheaper to get them in bulk anyway. I mean, I did obviously a smaller one at the beginning because I wasn't sure how many I was going to sell, but now, and then I did a bigger run the second time, which I just got. So now I think I have a little bit of a better idea of how many copies I could actually work through in
Yeah.
person. And of course, I mean, there's still Amazon as well, which is all the online copies if people want to order through there. So,
Yeah.
so many
What do you
little things for sure.
what do you think about that? Like, do you think about like your strategy with Amazon at all? Like, do you try to push people to buy directly from you, or is it fine if they buy through Amazon?
I don't mind if they buy through Amazon, honestly. I mean, I guess now that I have books available, I'd like them to buy through me, but obviously they have to be like physically in person or physically able to get to me. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of people I know that just don't live close to me. So that's just not really an option in that case. So I don't mind. I definitely think it opens up the possibility to a wider audience, but I'm definitely still figuring Amazon out. I haven't quite
Yeah.
like cracked the code yet, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Amazon's tricky. Like from what I understand, it's almost like kind of similar to podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, like reviews are
Yes.
everything. And like life hack for those listening, I'm sure you know this, that if you are publishing and launching on Amazon, like the easiest thing to do is to get like the number one new release in your category. And you do that pretty simply by like picking a smart category and then flooding sales and reviews like the first day.
Yeah.
And this is going to be hilarious. Like back in college when we were just starting to like learn about this and I was publishing my first book with my publisher at the time, they're very small, like just starting. They had me running around my college campus being like, I will Venmo you $1 to buy my book, like my ebook, because my ebook was like 99 cents. So I was like, if you buy the ebook right now, I will Venmo you $1 to leave a review. And literally, I was like running around my campus like a crazy woman, being like, buy my book. And I mean, it worked. Like, I was number one to release in my
Yeah.
category both times because it's relatively simple. But Instagram works like that. Like, it's all about number of sales in a given time. So if you can like condense that, like, ask your families and friends, like, be like, everybody at this time, like, go buy it on Amazon and like leave a review. And that is like a life hack for Amazon.
Yeah, which I did not know, nor did I do.
Oh, well,
So
I'm
learning
glad.
lots every day. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that does sound like a good strategy though, the running around being like, leave a review right now. Yeah, I love
I
that.
mean, I would not recommend it. I don't think that I would do it again. I think like the way that I did it the second time that was less chaotic was just I think like you would have been fine if you had done that with your
Mhm.
email community. Like they totally
Yeah.
would have done that. You like hit send on the MailChimp, sends it out, and like
Mhm.
everyone is then like heading directly to Amazon to do so.
Yeah.
It's the same strategy, just like less ridiculous, less clown like, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Just less nonsense.
Love
um,
it.
yeah, casual like college shenanigans.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, what do you think? Like, what are your goals? I think I want to get to like, what do you want for this experience for you, like for your author experience? Like, do you have any particular goals with your blog and the books?
I mean, I wouldn't really say it's a goal per se, but I guess kind of overall mission, I guess, is for people to feel less alone as they're going through their own life journeys. And so I try to bring that in to whatever I'm doing, whether that's the blog or the podcast or with my poetry books. And I mean, obviously, a big goal for me coming up is to hopefully release another poetry book, which I'm working on right now. Can't say much more about it, but it is something that's in progress. So that's something I'm really looking forward to as well. And then, yeah, just keep continuing to create, I think, is a big one because there was a lot of times when I was like, oh, like, I don't know if this is worth it. I don't know if I should keep like putting all my time into this. But I think even just this journey, like on the past year with my book and stuff, it's been really affirming for me to feel like there are people resonating with this. And I do think that creative work is important. And so I'm trying to just remind myself of that and validate myself with whatever I'm doing creatively. I think it's really important.
I think that I think that's really like the only goal is
Yeah.
like and as people and I I have to remind myself of that on a constant basis. I think like
Mm-hmm.
I tend to lean like such towards logic and like my parents are
Yeah.
business people, my brother's an entrepreneur, and so for us it's always about like KPIs and like what are your numbers and like what are the results and it's just like sometimes I just want to make something because it's fun and because I
Yeah.
love it and because it's fulfilling and like
Mm-hmm.
I think this is such an important takeaway for any entrepreneur because we get so lost in what we're building and we forget the why we're building.
Yeah.
And that is what is going to keep you going during the hard times.
So true.
Well, I think that is the perfect place to close. Chiara, thank you so much for coming. This has been such an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think it was like pretty fun. I don't know about you, but I really had a good time.
It was great. Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Maddie. It was a lot of fun and so cool that we have so many parallel experiences. I'm sure we
Totally.
would have met at a previous or later stage in some capacity in this life for sure.
100%. Like,
Yeah.
just because you were in Canada and I was in the US, like, it
Mhm.
was bound to happen at some point.
Yeah. I love it.